In today's video, you're going to learn how precious stones can actually be found out in nature in a simple and objective way. But let me ask you something right at the start. After watching this video, would you really be able to go out and find gemstones on your own? The answer might surprise you. Even today, a lot of areas around the world are still poorly explored, and many of them offer a range of natural gemstones that are much more accessible to anyone willing to go out, walk the land, and collect rough stones directly from nature. Of course, most of these stones are not worth tens of thousands of dollars like the big diamonds sold at auctions around the world. But they are still genuine gemstones, with enough market value to give you a small extra income if you learn how to find and identify them. Now let me turn the question back to you. Have you ever walked along a trail or a dirt road, kicking little rocks as you go, and suddenly one of them looked different enough to catch your attention? Most people ignore that feeling. They don't even spend 2 seconds really looking at a stone like that. But in some rare cases, people with zero gemology knowledge pick up a random stone just because it looked different, throw it in a drawer, and only years later find out it was actually a very rare gemstone. Just like this yellow diamond you're seeing on your screen right now. That's exactly how the story of many gemstones found in nature begins. So to keep things simple, here's the idea for today. I'm going to show you how paying more attention to the soil, the rocks, and the rivers in your area can dramatically increase your chances of recognizing a rough gem, even if it's not as rare as the diamond I just showed you. No promise of getting rich overnight, just a much more realistic goal. Learning to read the signs that tell you you're not just looking at another worthless piece of gravel. Just so you have a clear picture, when people hear precious stones, a lot of them immediately think of huge mines, heavy machinery, and deep tunnels underground. But in practice, a big part of the discoveries happens outside, in rock outcrops, eroded slopes, riverbeds, road cuts, and places where the ground has been cut away for construction. In many of these places, both nature and human activity have already done the heavy work of breaking or eroding volcanic rocks that used to hide those gemstones inside. If you look closely, you'll notice that the power of running water has concentrated heavier minerals in specific points along the landscape. What's missing is a trained eye to understand this process and recognize when you're standing in a place that actually has potential and deserves your time. To find precious stones in nature, the first step is to understand where they form and how they end up exposed where you can pick them up. To simplify that, in geology, we usually talk about two main types of occurrences: primary deposits and secondary deposits. Primary deposits are where the mineral is still locked inside the rock where it formed, the so-called host rock. Secondary deposits are places where weathering has already broken the original rock apart and freed the gemstones, moving and concentrating them in other environments like rivers and old alluvial terraces. If you want to increase your chances of finding something, you need to know how to recognize both. In primary deposits, your main focus is the rock. Many of the most important gemstones form in igneous and metamorphic rocks. Pegmatite, for example, is a coarse-grained granitic rock, usually light in color, that can host tourmaline, beryl, including aquamarine, and in some geologic settings, emerald, as well as topaz and high-quality quartz. It often looks like a white or pinkish mass of quartz and feldspar, with darker or colorful crystals cutting across it. In metamorphic belts, schists and gneisses can concentrate minerals like garnet, kyanite, staurolite, and under specific conditions, corundum, the mineral behind rubies and sapphires. In ultramafic terrains and rocks like serpentinite, you can be in a favorable environment for nephrite jade and other magnesium-rich silicate minerals. That means if you live in a region with old folded rocks, cut by quartz veins, with outcrops of schist, gneiss, amphibolite, or pegmatite, your chances of finding gemstones still in the bedrock are much higher than on wide sedimentary plains where soft sandstones and shales dominate. That doesn't mean it's impossible to find something in sedimentary areas, but it shows you where it makes more sense to focus your effort. Out in the field, pay attention to road cuts, abandoned quarries, eroded banks, exposed hillsides, and rock blocks crossed by quartz veins and clear metamorphic textures. Many times a garnet, a tourmaline, or a clear quartz crystal first appears as a tiny spot of different color or different luster on the rock surface, something that only jumps out to someone who is already trained to look for it. Once gemstones form inside the rocks, nature and human activity, like building roads for example, start another process, breaking, wearing down, and moving that material. Natural forces such as rain, temperature changes, and ice slowly fragment rocks over thousands or millions of years. That loose material starts to move downslope, forming alluvial deposits just above the bedrock and colluvial deposits at the foot of the slopes. In this kind of environment, dense minerals like garnet, magnetite, ilmenite, cassiterite, and even diamonds tend to accumulate in specific spots. That's why hillside areas with coarser gravel, darker or reddish soils, and visible concentrations of heavy minerals are already your first signal to slow down and pay attention. When water comes into the picture, the process becomes even more interesting for anyone searching for gemstones. Rivers act like natural separation machines. During high water events, they tear loose chunks of rock and carry sand, gravel, and cobbles downstream with strong current. As the water speed changes, the heavier material tends to settle where the flow loses energy. That's why many secondary gemstone deposits show up on the inside bends of rivers, behind large boulders, in small depressions on the river bottom, in little pockets between rocks, or on coarse gravel bars. In these places, you can find rounded garnets, fragments of clear quartz, dark green cobbles that suggest the presence of jade, and in some cases, rough ruby and sapphire crystals, along with other gemstones that have already been freed from their original host rock. In practical terms, walking along a dry riverbed, a shallow creek, or a freshly exposed bank after a flood is one of the most efficient ways to search. Instead of scanning all the gravel, you focus your attention on specific zones, darker gravel patches, spots where the stones look denser and heavier, areas where the usual light sand disappears and only well-rounded pebbles remain. At those points, it's worth scooping up small amounts of material, washing them in a pan or in a simple tub, and looking carefully. Stones that stand out because of their color, their unusual weight in your hand, or a different kind of shine deserve closer inspection. With time, your eyes start to recognize patterns. Red garnets mixed with dark sand, milky quartz beside clear quartz, small prismatic tourmaline crystals trapped in granitic gravel. Knowing where to search is half the job. The other half is learning how to look at the right stone in the right way. Out in the field, 3 basic properties already help a lot: hardness, density, and luster. Even without a lab, you can estimate these properties with very simple objects. Hardness, for example, can be tested by comparison. Your fingernail scratches very soft minerals, up to around 2.5 on the Mohs scale. A steel knife blade is around 5 to 5.5. A piece of common glass is roughly 5.5 to 6, while quartz crystals have hardness 7. So if your stone scratches glass but is not scratched by the knife, it's probably in the quartz range or harder. If it's easily scratched by your fingernail or by the blade, it's softer and in most cases not a high-value gem material. Another important characteristic is density, which you feel by comparing stones of very similar size in your hand. Pick up 2 pebbles with about the same volume, one clearly just a regular rock and another that caught your attention. If one of them feels much heavier than you'd expect, it's worth taking a closer look at what it is. Minerals like garnet, magnetite, cassiterite, and some metallic oxides are noticeably denser. Luster helps you separate dull rock from potential gemstones. A vitreous luster, like polished glass, a slightly greasy surface as if there was a thin oil film, a submetallic shine, or a very strong adamantine luster can be good indicators that you found something like topaz or even diamond. On the other hand, some industrial slags and pieces of glass can also shine when you find them in nature. So never trust a single property. Always combine hardness, density, and luster to have a better idea before you take your finds to a lab that can officially certify your gemstones. At home, you can lay out your samples, wash every stone thoroughly, and examine them under good lighting, preferably using a simple 10x hand lens. Look for internal features: well-formed crystal faces, smooth conchoidal fractures, inclusions, and banding. Quartz, for example, can show up as prismatic crystals with pointed terminations or as milky massive pieces. Tourmaline appears as elongated prisms, often with visible striations along the sides. Garnet tends to form more rounded or dodecahedral crystals. Rough sapphires and rubies may appear as more opaque crystals with hexagonal cross-sections. Over time, your brain starts to link texture, color, and weight to specific mineral groups. It's a cumulative learning process. The more stones you examine, test, and compare with known references, the less you rely on pure intuition and the more confident you become in your first-pass identifications. In the end, every time you find gemstones in nature, you'll notice it has much less to do with being lucky and much more to do with repeating a simple observation method. You apply basic tests of hardness, density, and luster to filter which samples really deserve further study or even a professional evaluation. That's how a lot of ordinary people, walking through what look like totally boring places, end up finding garnets, tourmalines, special quartz crystals, and in rare cases, high-value stones like the diamond I showed you at the beginning of this video. Now think about this for a moment. How many rocks have you already taken home just because they look different and then left forgotten in a box without ever testing them properly? And how many people walk every day across areas with favorable geology with no idea they're literally stepping over possible gemstones? That's exactly where the difference lies between someone who just likes rocks and someone who really becomes a conscious gem hunter. So if you've already found stones or you plan to go out and search for different kinds of gemstones in nature, you're already one step ahead. A great way to speed up that journey is to study with structured material, full of photos, real-world examples, and straightforward explanations about tests and home-based identification methods. That's exactly what you'll find in the book, Gemology Journey for Beginners, available on Amazon. It was designed for people who are just starting out and want to move from, I found a pretty rock, to, I know how to start figuring out whether this has real value. Inside, you'll find test sequences, practical descriptions of common minerals and important gemstones, plus tips on how to organize your finds. And when you pick up a copy, you're also helping support our project, which brings this knowledge for free to people all around the world. But if you feel it's not the right moment to get the book yet, no problem. You can still subscribe for free and follow the next videos, where we'll cover everything you need to know about the world of gemstones, including the next video that's already showing up on your screen right now. Thanks for liking and subscribing. Good luck, Gem Hunter.